And welcome to a very special morning after Super Tuesday edition of Early Start. I'm Kate Baldwin.
And I'm John Berman. It is now Wednesday, March 2nd. Want to welcome all of our viewers here in the United States and around the world. Yes, in fact, Super Tuesday is now Wednesday, but still quite super for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump scored victories in 7 states so far: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Virginia, and Vermont. The headline right now at 3 a.m. Eastern: we're still waiting on Alaska. They are counting right now. You can see Ted Cruz holding on to a narrow 239 vote lead. This keeps changing, folks, so don't go anywhere. It could get interesting. Also interesting, Donald Trump, he did not hold a big election night victory rally. I don't think I've ever seen this before. Instead, he held a news conference in Florida. He had Chris Christie at his side.
I'm a unifier. I know people are going to find that a little bit hard to believe, but believe me, I am a unifier. Once we get all of this finished, I'm going to go after one person. That's Hillary Clinton, on the assumption she's allowed to run, which is a big assumption. I don't know that she's going to be allowed to run.
All right, Donald Trump, not the only winner. Ted Cruz picked up 2 victories as well, his home state of Texas, and also an important win for Ted Cruz in Oklahoma. And Marco Rubio in the win column, his first and only victory in the race so far. He won the Minnesota caucuses.
On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton with a big night, winning in 7 states: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Bernie Sanders picking up 4 wins, his home state, Vermont, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Minnesota. Now, Hillary Clinton, in her victory speech this evening, she took aim straight at Donald Trump's campaign theme.
It's clear tonight that the stakes in this election have never been higher. And the rhetoric we're hearing on the other side has never been lower. Trying to divide America between us and them is wrong, and we're not going to let it work.
Let's get first to CNN Politics and CNN Money reporter MJ Lee, who is in Washington for us this morning. You pick, MJ, the headlines. What do you think the big headlines are as we now look forward to what's next?
Look, Super Tuesday was the day that both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton took very big steps towards the general election and winning the nominations of each of their parties. For Donald Trump, I think he did as well as he could have expected, although, as you mentioned, Ted Cruz ended up winning Texas as well as Oklahoma. Not everyone expected him to win, anything other than Texas. So a better night for Cruz than a lot of people had expected. But even still, I think the party, members of the party, Republican Party, wake up this morning on Wednesday. They're waking up to really the political reality that Donald Trump is on his path to being the GOP nominee. And in the coming weeks, we are going to see a flurry of activity, discussions, a lot of strategizing to see if there can be a last-ditch effort to stop Trump's momentum. And I think at this point, there's no concerted effort, and we can't emphasize this enough. There's no concerted effort to really make this happen. I think the window between March 1st and March 15th is really where Republican Party establishment members are looking at to try to stop Trump and try to slow him down. Whether or not that's possible, we'll have to see. Now, for Hillary Clinton, this was also an important night and a good night for her as well. She was able to show, and after having struggled a little bit in the early states, to really, keep Bernie Sanders away. Of course, we all remember in Iowa, she had a difficult time having a decisive win. She barely actually won in the state of Iowa, in the Iowa caucuses there. And tonight was a moment of a celebration for her because she was able to show that she has a national coalition behind her.
MJ, stick around with us. Let's bring in the rest of our panel. Josh Rogin, CNN political analyst and Bloomberg View columnist in Washington for us. Dylan Byers, CNN senior reporter for media and politics. And in Los Angeles, Maeve Reston, CNN national political reporter, along with Ron Brownstein, a CNN senior political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic. MJ Lee is still with us as well. Ron, if you look at just the political events going for today, it shows the focus of where this race now moves next. John Kasich, he is in Michigan. A lot of these guys are in Michigan. Marco Rubio, he's going to be in Michigan. Ted Cruz, he's going to be in Kansas. And you've got Bernie Sanders, he's going to be in Michigan as well. They so very quickly, as we've seen with every single one of these primaries. Super Tuesday's over, and now the focus is on what's next.
Well, you know, this first half of March, you have 28 states voting. I mean, more than half of the states are going to be, registering here, and the momentum becomes such a powerful force. I mean, you know, to disrupt where Donald Trump is, you need something to change the dynamic of this race. And one thing that could change the dynamic of the race would be the party leadership on the brink here of kind of sensing that, you know, as MJ said, the hours are dwindling to try to make a concerted stand against Donald Trump, unifying in some kind of overwhelming effort to stop him. That doesn't seem like it's going to happen. On the other side, you know, Bernie Sanders, he faces the reality of the Democratic coalition as it moves into the more diverse places, consolidating in a way that makes it very, very difficult for him unless he can fundamentally change that dynamic among African-American voters. And so really what you have on both sides, I think, Kate, are patterns that we saw initially, particularly in South Carolina and Nevada, hardening as you move forward into these later contests, and the clock kind of ticking very quickly on the candidates who are chasing the front runners.
You know, Maeve, it's really interesting hearing from all the campaigns tonight, because the Trump people are like, look, we won by a lot. How come you're not saying we're essentially the presumptive nominee? Then you have the Cruz campaign saying we barely finished second. I mean, we have nearly as many delegates tonight as Donald Trump. And the Rubio folks, what they say is we chipped in. You know, we chipped away big time at Donald Trump's leads. He underperformed in all the polls. We're coming on strong. We have all the momentum. You know, how do you score what happened tonight, Maeve, in the Republican field?
Well, I mean, I think this was a dominant night, obviously, for Donald Trump. But in a sense, because there was a mixed result across these different states, everybody can make their own argument, even if it's a little bit misleading, as we know. You know, Donald Trump talked tonight about being the unifier for the Republican Party, and tried to project more of a presidential air at that press conference, I guess. But it's just not clear whether or not that's ever going to happen. I mean, obviously, we're seeing all of these divisions. At the same time, Ted Cruz has a very difficult path ahead, even though he's highlighting his wins tonight. This was supposed to be his southern firewall tonight, and he didn't pull off the kinds of wins that people were expecting many months ago. And Marco Rubio is sending out an email to donors talking about how he's the underdog going into Florida, and wants a flood of resources for his campaign. He's got a really difficult argument to make over the next couple of weeks. So a little bit for everyone to make the arguments, but Donald Trump's night tonight.
And I'm just struck by it, and I know a lot of folks were talking about it this evening. We can show that video again of Donald Trump, as you said, kind of holding this press conference, and a lot of people are kind of thinking maybe he's trying to take on this presidential tone, but right over his shoulder, and the person who introduced him, Chris Christie. That was just an amazing image to watch, Dylan.
Yeah, no, it's an absolutely amazing image to watch. And if you happen to be following along with Twitter, you saw that there were many memes and videos of Chris Christie, some of them actually quite funny. But no, of course, what Donald Trump was trying to do was appear presidential. I mean, if you look at the way Christie introduced him, the way he stood behind him the entire time, it's not dissimilar from when both President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden are in the briefing room together. It's by taking a press conference on the night of Super Tuesday rather than giving a victory speech. It certainly sort of strikes this presidential cast. And that's what Trump is trying to do. It's the same thing Hillary Clinton is trying to do on the Democratic side. They're effectively trying to stake their claim as the nominees of their party before actually becoming the nominees of their party.
And Josh, let's just wrap up with a Hillary Clinton thought right here. You know, Hillary Clinton has proven, the Clinton campaign says, that she can win in the South and also in the North. The Massachusetts victory, I think, is the one that the Clinton campaign is the most proud of today, because it is a state that borders Vermont as well. But, you know, Bernie Sanders, we talk about Ted Cruz winning 2, maybe 3 states on the Republican side. You know, Bernie Sanders picked up, 4 states and some serious delegates.
And once that he was really trying to win. These weren't surprised. He really.
Well, that's the point. And they make that point. They say, look, these are the states we targeted. We won the states we targeted, except for Massachusetts.
Right. So what this shows us is that the Hillary Clinton campaign is still on a trajectory to win the nomination. That basic truth hasn't changed. But there are weaknesses in her campaign, right? young voters, first-time voters, right? These are big problems for her. And the fact that she is not winning by even larger margins shows that she is vulnerable when the general election comes, right? When you talk to insiders, they always say that, oh, the Republicans are signing up millions of new voters, right? And the Democrats are not, even with the Bernie Sanders voters. And the ones that they have signed up, Hillary Clinton has to reach them and get them to the polls and convince them that she represents them. She's trying hard to do that now.
She did get big margins, albeit states that will not be Democratic states in a general election. But if you look at, you look at Texas, you look at Alabama, you look at Georgia, she won those pretty easily.
Yeah, and one thing that, and MJ, this is one of your areas of expertise, is just the money that's flooding in here now. I mean, there's a lot, we were talking about how the anti-Trump super PACs, they're really firing up now, talking to donors a little
Firing up now. By the way, it's March 2nd. They're firing up on March 2nd.
Now seems to be questionable timing on that. But there's also kind of the classic kind of Trump counterintuitive argument here, which is, sure, throw all the money you want at anti-Trump, the anti-Trump movement. It only helps him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impossible to overstate how important this window that I mentioned earlier, starting now until March 15th, how critical that window is and how much emphasis Republicans are now placing on that window, perhaps viewing it as almost the last real opportunity to stop Trump. I thought something interesting that kept cropping up in my reporting this week, when I talked to strategists, Republican strategists and operatives, about how the last week or so has gone down. The one thing they kept pointing to was that Marco Rubio had a very strong debate where he really took on Donald Trump for the very first time. And these strategists were pointing out that there just wasn't enough time. This was too close to Super Tuesday, and there wasn't enough time for there to be a movement to raise money, to get the anti-Trump messaging out there, to capitalize on Rubio's performance. And that is why now we are going to see a flood of money, and this is according to several strategists I've spoken to who track ad buying and how much money is spent in this election. They are expecting a flood of money to really be spent on anti-Trump messaging, targeting really the March 5th, March 8th, and the March 15th states. The states that are going to have races on those 3 days. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of ads and just a flood of cash in those 3 states, in those 3 days.
Gird your loins, voters in those states. You're about to get flooded.
$25 million is the number I've seen tossed around. And one of the open questions this entire election is, what will Donald Trump be willing to spend out of his own pocket to counter this? Since the early states, it hasn't been quite as much. But we'll get back to that in a moment. Stand by, guys, because the moment you've all been waiting for, an Alaska update. Ted Cruz now leading by 239 votes in Alaska with 64% in. Let's go to the ground there. CNN's Paul Verkaman in Anchorage. Paul.
All right, Kate, John, first off, I want to rename your show. Enough of this early start stuff. I always didn't like that bias. We're just going to call it Late Night Hangout in Alaska. It works for me. I'm a bar owner's son. Let's look at the most updated numbers. We've got 14,417 votes in. You've got 10% for Carson. You've got 35% for Cruz. You've got 4.4% for Kasich. 15.9% for Rubio and 34.1% for Trump. Now, an update on the delegates. And I want to thank everybody here with the Republicans in Alaska. Suzanne Downing crunching these numbers and typing them as we speak. Again, really appreciate your being with us. She tells me that the delegate breakdown right now would be 12 for Cruz, 11 for Trump, 5 for Rubio. So as it stands now, this could end up being a Cruz victory, but, and this is a massive but, if we look at this screen, what is still out there? Some affluent Anchorage neighborhoods, and up in the Mat-Su Valley, Wasilla is not in yet, neither is Greater Palmer, so we have to wait and see on that. Where will they come in? I was in Wasilla earlier tonight. In fact, I talked to perhaps the best known Trump supporter in the entire area, Sarah Palin. I said to her, what if, just what if, hypothetical, it ended up being a Trump-Hillary race, what would happen? Here's what she had to say.
Oh, Trump, because people they know that the status quo has got to go. And Hillary, of course, has been part of the status quo. What cracks me up about these politicians, typical politicians, and thank God Trump isn't a politician, these guys and these gals who've been part of the problem for all these years, trying to fool America into thinking that they're going to be now the solution, they've had their chance. They've had their chance to implement solutions that we need to, as we face all these tremendous challenges, national security-wise and economically-wise. And instead, they have really been perpetuating the problems for them now to say, oh, well, give me another chance and now I'll do something right. No, we're not that stupid. It's time for somebody new energy, new blood in there, new people who are independent. And as I say, beholden only to the voters.
I also pressed Sarah Palin as to whether, if Trump won, would she want to be part of the administration in some way. And she said right now she's concentrating on being a mother and taking the kids to basketball and whatnot. And one more thing I need to add here. These folks are pressing me so hard to have a refreshment, as many of them are, as we're at the Lofts in downtown Anchorage, and they're crunching the numbers. But I told them that, of course, would be a career ender. I'm not going to have this thing go south, John and Kate, in the middle of counting numbers with Alaskans. Clearly, I say our most independent voters. What do you say?
I beg to differ on that point. Never a career ender. I always think it's a career maker. I say you take them up on that offer, friend.
Although I have to say that it's probably, it's a relief to, I think, the members of every campaign knowing that the guys counting the votes are drinking right now.
You know what? It's what we... Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
All right. Good luck. Good luck out there at Alaska Ball. We'll check back in with you in a little bit. Coming up, we've been talking about it all night and all morning. Donald Trump with a big night, winning 7 states. Ted Cruz picking up 2 states. Marco Rubio with his first win. We're going to talk about the fight to try to catch Donald Trump.
Yep.
Is it even possible?
Senator, you keep saying that, and he keeps winning states, and you're talking about Virginia, and that's another state that Donald Trump won, and I'm just wondering if there's a certain amount of denial that you're in about this race.
No, Jake. No, because if you look, again, we're in the winner-take-all phase of this. You know this is about delegate count. This is not a traditional race. Usually in a race like this, you'd have a front runner, and at this point people would be saying, you need to drop out and rally around the front runner for the sake of the party. They're saying the opposite now. There will never come a time in this race where our supporters are asking us to get out and rally around Donald Trump. What people are saying is fight as hard as you can to save the party of Lincoln and Reagan from a con artist who refuses to criticize the KKK. If we nominate Donald Trump as our nominee for the Republican Party, it will be the end of the modern Republican Party. Hillary Clinton will smoke him in a general election, and the next 4 years are going to be no different than the last state for our country. I will fight as long and as hard as it takes to save this party and the conservative movement from someone like Donald Trump.
A little while ago, Marco Rubio telling Jake Tapper, all is well, remain calm. This is just how we planned it, despite winning only 1 race so far out of the first 15. Our panel is back with us. Ron Brownstein, let me put this question to you. Marco Rubio's gone after Donald Trump hard since the debate last Thursday night in Houston. Every day.
Do we need to say small hands?
Small hands, wedding pants, you name it. Is there evidence tonight that, yes, maybe that was able to drag down Donald Trump a little bit, but it didn't help Marco Rubio? Maybe it helped Ted Cruz.
Yeah. Well, look, I think the first part of what Marco Rubio said to Jake is in fact true, and we've talked about it over the last hour and a half, that normally if someone had posted the performance that Donald Trump has to this point, you would have a cry for rallying around the frontrunner, particularly the ability to win across the geographic divide. Now you have instead Republicans pointing out that, look, he is still not usually getting above 40% of the vote. He's still in the 30s. He is still facing resistance from white-collar voters. And in fact, if you look at, by the way, if you look at the polling and the exit polling, in almost every state, a majority of Republicans have said that undocumented immigrants should get legal status rather than being deported. So, what Rubio and Cruz and Kasich have to work with is that there is a supply of institutional support and money that would not have been there in the past because there is so much fear about Donald Trump. What is working against them, John, is that, we were talking about before, what drives people out of races, it's not just money. It's voters concluding that they are wasting their vote by voting for them because someone else is going to win. And that is why winning is just so important to restore credibility. And these kind of moral victories of coming in second and third, they really are losing their value in a hurry. And on March 15th, when you get to that, that big clump of big states of North Carolina and Illinois and Missouri and Florida and Ohio. If you can't stop Trump, then it really becomes very implausible to look at how you're going to do it, unless you can deny him the first ballot majority collectively rather than individually.
So you look at Marco Rubio's fundraising plea that he sent out. They sent out an email right after all of this, and it says, "This is just the beginning." That's how obviously they want to reframe it. Looking ahead to Florida, though, what does that look like? Could that be the beginning of the end, though, for Marco Rubio? Obviously, that is the state for him.
That could be the end of the end for Marco
Donald
Rubio.
Trump. Yeah. I'm being kind. You're not. Donald Trump, though, holding his speech / rally / press conference there, and Ted Cruz. I mean, he could go hard in Florida.
Right. This is a unified campaign message by the Rubio team. They had a call with donors Tuesday morning, warning them that this was going to be a long haul, promising that Marco would stay in it to the end, and lowering expectations for Super Tuesday. The insiders know that Marco Rubio, if he loses Florida, he's in big trouble, and I think that's why you saw Donald Trump in Florida. He thinks this is a knockout punch. That's why he's working on those endorsements that he claims not to care about in Florida, because he wants to lock up Florida. If Marco Rubio doesn't win his home state, his whole rationale for becoming president is called into big question. Same thing for John Kasich. If he doesn't win his home state, he's probably done. So after March 15th, if they both win their home states, they both move on. If one of them doesn't win their home states, I think they're cooked.
Yeah, that's all I meant by end of the end. If Marco Rubio can't win Florida, there are problems there. Maeve, Reston, the question is, are we going to see more small hands jokes? Are we going to see more wetting the pants jokes for Marco Rubio?
Right, or did it not work? Right?
Or, did it not work? Or with this debate coming up, Thursday night and with another CNN debate next week, do you think that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are going to have to address each other again at some point? Because they are pulling from each other.
They are pulling from each other, and this is clearly a fight where they're having to fight on all fronts. But I do think that Marco Rubio, what he demonstrated in that debate and what he's continuing to demonstrate on the campaign trail with these attacks against Donald Trump is that he can go hard at Donald Trump, not back down. And that's been really important to donors who are waiting on the sidelines. So we haven't really seen yet what the effect of that is. If there were any good signs for Marco Rubio tonight, it was that in some of those states, the late deciders were tilting toward him, and then in other states toward Ted Cruz. So that's a big question. But I was talking to some of the folks who are involved in this anti-Trump effort, and they're going to be, putting, we don't know how much money exactly over the next couple of weeks into attacks on Donald Trump. They're going to be basically making the argument that he's been a fraud, going after his business deals, going hard on the sustained attack on his electability against Hillary Clinton, saying that these other candidates are much more electable against Hillary Clinton. And so we haven't yet seen what that will do, but at the same time, these are attacks on Donald Trump that have been used before that haven't worked. So there's going to have to be a lot of money, a lot of points put behind those ads to actually move the ball in this race, and it's just not clear yet whether that actually will happen.
Kate and John, if I may.
Go ahead.
That we keep talking, the GOP establishment keeps talking about making a concerted effort against Donald Trump, something they say they haven't really done yet. And, of course, the next 2 weeks are crucial for Marco Rubio. But what does a sustained attack against Donald Trump really look like? I mean, this is a guy who refused to condemn white supremacists and the KKK and did just fine on Super Tuesday. This is a guy who, of course, has called for a ban on Muslims entering the United States. He's referred to Mexican immigrants as criminals and rapists. I mean, he has defied political gravity. He has gone against every rule. He has said everything that you're not supposed to say as a presidential candidate, and his support has only gone up. So, yes, Rubio and the entire establishment that is now backing him can go very hard on Trump, but it's very hard to imagine if nothing has stuck to Trump for the last 9 months, what is going to stick to him over the next 2 weeks?
All right, guys, stand by. We're going to get a break in right now. We're going to talk about the Democrats when we come back. Bernie Sanders picked up 4 states, but the night belonged to Hillary Clinton. What is next in the Democratic race heading into a big debate on CNN Sunday night in Flint, Michigan?
What we need in America today is more love and kindness. Because you know what? what? It works. Instead of building walls, we're going to break down barriers and build ladders of opportunity and empowerment so every American can live up to his or her potential, because then and only then can America live up to its full potential too.
Who could Hillary Clinton be pushing that message at? Who is she speaking to in talking about not building walls, building, what did she say? Building togetherness? Let's just say that's what she said. That's Hillary Clinton tonight. A big night for her, winning 7 states. Let's discuss the state of the Democratic race now, post Super Tuesday, and looking forward. MJ, talk to me about the big headlines for the night. A big night for Hillary Clinton, but Bernie Sanders, he racked up 4 states. They are all moving forward. And the Hillary Clinton campaign, well, they're very happy with how things ended up and definitely saying that when you look at the math, it is clearly in her favor. They're not calling on Bernie Sanders to drop out.
Yeah, I mean, I thought what was so striking about Hillary Clinton's speech tonight was that you definitely saw her pivoting to the general election. This was not a candidate who seemed haunted by Bernie Sanders, nipping at her heels. She was not talking about the importance of not being a single issue candidate, something she has said a lot in these kinds of settings at rallies. She was really talking as a general election candidate. She only mentioned Bernie Sanders really in passing at the top of her speech, congratulating him for a job well done. And then she really moved on to the issues that she wanted to talk about, raising middle-class wages, breaking down barriers for women and the LGBT community. And then the clip that you just played, right? Going after clearly Republican frontrunner Donald Trump when she's talking about building walls and, divisive rhetoric. That is without a doubt aimed at Donald Trump. And I think she is getting ready and really pivoting to November and really showing that after her, good night, a Super Tuesday, and having these wins under her belt now, she's ready to take on whoever the Republican nominee will end up being.
It's so interesting. You get the sense that Hillary Clinton has wanted to pivot for months and months and months. Her kickoff was about pivoting. Then after, the testifying before Congress in the first debate, it was about pivoting. And the later debate, she tried to pivot and she could just never get out. She was always dragged back in. Now, finally, she thinks she can do it. Ron Brownstein, the coalition she is putting together looks very much like the coalition that Barack Obama put together in 2008. I guess minus young voters, but racially speaking, demographically speaking, you look at the African-American vote in Georgia and Alabama, Hillary Clinton just crushed it among black voters there. She was up over 90%, I believe, in Alabama. In Georgia, she's up over 80% there, doing very, very well. What does this mean going forward in the primary season? What does this do for her in a general?
Yeah, let's talk about both, because as we said before, in the primaries, there are no big states on the Democratic side that are not diverse. So every big state has a substantial minority population, and the equation is simple. Bernie Sanders simply has to do better among African-American voters. So far, Hillary Clinton has gotten at least 70% among African-American voters in every state with an exit poll, and above 80 in almost every state with an exit poll. And he cannot win probably any big states if she can hold that kind of advantage, because he can't get far enough ahead among white voters. If you think about the general election, I think it's fascinating. Donald Trump would likely be as disruptive a force if he is the general election nominee as he's been as a primary candidate, in that he could scramble the map somewhat with his strength among blue-collar white voters, in particular blue-collar white men. I've seen polls, John, where he is polling at 69% among white men without a college education, which is the same number that Ronald Reagan polled in 1984 when he won 49 states. Here's the catch, though. White men without a college education are half as much of the electorate, roughly, as they were in 1984. And if you look at the growing groups in the electorate, what I've called the coalition of the ascendant, millennials, minorities, college-educated white women, he is facing negatives above 70% with those voters. And that's why so many Republicans are nervous, not only about what he might mean for this year, but how he might brand the party in the long run with the groups that are growing and are increasingly going to be the center of the American electorate.
And Ron, you talk about millennials in that growing group. Maeve, where do they go in a general if Hillary Clinton is the nominee and Donald Trump is the nominee, let's say? Because that is what the youth vote is really one of the big drivers of Bernie Sanders' campaign.
It is, and that's what the big test for Hillary Clinton is going to be over the next couple of months here, is whether or not she can fine-tune a message that actually is geared to resonate with young voters, whether she can actually turn them out. And she so far has demonstrated a lot of problems in that area. And Bernie Sanders clearly has, wiped the board with those voters, as we've seen in many of the primaries so far. She still seems to be fine-tuning that message a lot and hasn't actually figured out exactly what she's going to do to reach those voters. But Donald Trump could be a huge force in helping her do that. His rhetoric is very polarizing among young voters in particular. You see groups in Florida, for example, already registering young Latino voters just on the basis of what Donald Trump has been saying on the campaign trail, and that may be the biggest tool in her arsenal.
Guys, stand by. We're going to keep our eye on Alaska to see where those election results are coming in. Also coming up for us, there's the discussion over Super Tuesday, sparking a very fierce debate amongst voters, amongst political watchers, and also amongst CNN contributors on some of the most biggest issues facing this campaign. We'll show you this moment that happened live on CNN, and we'll discuss.
I thought it was sound. All right, there is no doubt this primary season has had a lot of tension in this race, and the tension came to a head tonight. They were talking about Donald Trump and his refusal to Jake Tapper to disavow the KKK, and in David Duke in his interview with Jake Tapper, Jeffrey Lord and Van Jones, two CNN contributors, they had a heated discussion about it. Watch.
The things that Donald Trump has done, and not just in this race, are horribly offensive. You can go back with this guy for a long time. I want to talk. I want to talk. This is important.
Say anything yet.
Oh, you breathe. You can go back to the Central Jogger case, where he came out and had innocent black kids winding up in prison.
Innocent kids.
Hold on a second. Innocent black kids. Listen, hold on a second. We have a big problem at this point now, because I agree with you about a lot. I think that we have taken him not seriously. We have not respected his voters. But there is a dark underside here, and Essie is right. He is whipping up and tapping into and pushing buttons that are very, very frightening to me and frightening to a lot of people. Number one, when he is playing funny with the Klan, that is not cool.
He didn't play funny with the Klan.
Hold a second. I know this man when he gets passionate about terrorism. I know how he talks about terrorism. The Klan is a terrorist organization that has killed
a leftist terrorist organization.
You can put whatever label you want. That's your game to play.
No, that's your game to play.
No, they're not. We're not going to play that game.
No, we are going to understand history.
No. You need to take a serious look at the fact that this man is playing fast and loose and footsie. When you talk about terrorism, he gets passionate. He says, no, this is wrong. But when you talk about the Klan, oh, I don't know. That's wrong. And then you came on the air and you said, well, this is just like when Reverend Wright was speaking.
Yeah.
Reverend Wright never lynched anybody. Reverend Wright never killed anybody.
Reverend Wright is an anti-Semite.
Reverend Wright never put anybody on a post. And you guys play these word games. And it's wrong to do in America.
It is wrong to understand that these are not leftists. They were a
What difference does it make if you call them
a lot of difference,
Van. Call them chipmunks. They kill people. And you don't play games with that.
You're right. And you don't hide and say that's not part of the base of the Democratic Party. That has been, they were the military arm, the terrorist arm of the Democratic Party, according to historians. For God's sakes, read your history.
I don't know. I don't care.
This whole attitude of dividing by race is still here, and this is how Democrats do the deal.
I don't care how they voted 50 years ago. I care about who they killed. And
I care about American history. It counts.
You have stood with Donald Trump, and you have made a case for Donald Trump when nobody else wanted to, and you've earned the respect of an awful lot of people. But when you do not acknowledge that he did not answer that question with the passion he's answered with other terrorist organizations, you do yourself a disservice, you do your kids a disservice.
He has made this point over and over and over again. This is a media thing here. Did he make a mistake when he sure, but he has said this many, many times. I've gone back and looked. He's well on record over and over and over again on this.
It's worse than that, sir. It's worse than that. that whole thing with those central jogger kids, he got the entire city of New York whipped up on this idea that these kids had done something wrong. And then when it turned out they were innocent, we all make mistakes.
Right.
He never apologized to those kids. And that's a stain on him. And you can walk through time after time where he's done stuff like that. The stuff he said about Native Americans being, criminal organizations and mafias. He said many
things. What you're doing right here, what you're doing here is dividing people. We're all Americans here, man. You are dividing people. This is what liberals do. You are dividing people by race.
I am not.
This is what liberalism is all about.
The Klan divided people by race.
You have to divide by race.
The Klan kill people by race, and he had the opportunity, and he didn't do it tonight.
They did it to further the progressive agenda.
Why do you listen? That is, first of all, so absurd.
It is not
the Democratic Party of the South in the old days was a racist party, and you are correct, sir. They were a violent party, and you are correct,
How do you think we got Woodrow Wilson elected?
But hold on a second. That's not the Democratic Party of today. So what are you talking about that for? You played these games.
It is the Democratic Party of today. The Democratic Party of today divides by race.
Listen, I have a kid, 7 years old.
Right.
He can't even watch. I used to want him to say, I don't want you watching the Kardashians. I want you watching the news so you can learn something. You know what? Watching all this nonsense in your party, he turns around and he says, Dad, you're a liar. He doesn't even know what the word means, but he sees so much vitriol from your party. Right. He brings that into our house. Now we got to have him watch, Nick Jr. He can't even absorb civics because of what's going on in your party. The circus wing in your party. Do not play and tell Donald Trump. I know you. I trust you. Tell Donald Trump he needs, for my children's sake, for the children's sake of America, if he's going to lead this country, he needs to be as passionate about what is happening to people in my community as anybody else.
We have to be passionate about making sure that, as Robert Kennedy used to say, that this country is colorblind. We have to, as President Kennedy used to say in that Birmingham speech, that race has no place in American life or law. That's what we have to do, and we have lost that totally because the Democratic Party insists on dividing people by race, and it's wrong.
There you have it. That happened earlier this evening. Let us bring in Dylan Byers right now on this. Dylan, you see the passion here in this discussion between Van Jones and Jeffrey Lord. Do you see this as a foreshadowing of the debates, the fights to come in a general election if it is Donald Trump versus either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders?
Well, first and foremost, I see this as a really singular and actually wonderful moment in the 2016 campaign. And I say that we spend so much time focusing on the horse race, focusing on the day-to-day, the delegates, what have you. What the best thing that presidential campaigns do is they shed a light on the country, and they shed a light on some of the bigger picture issues that the two parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, are arguing over. Obviously, America has always dealt with this underlying racial tension. Republicans believe that Democrats divide, or many far-right Republicans anyway, believe that Democrats are responsible for dividing the party or dividing the country into various groups based on identity, based on demographics. Democrats obviously believe that far-right Republicans, certainly Donald Trump, are exploiting racial tensions and racial fears and sort of using that to sort of gin up support among the white working class, particularly in the South and in some of the more rural parts of the country. This is a debate that goes back to the founding of this nation, and to see it being played out between these two CNN contributors in a way that was passionate, personal, respectful, but also very sort of, hard-charging and hard-pressing. I thought it was an amazing moment, and I do think that it's a conversation that's going to continue to play out in the primary and into the general election.
And maybe not as respectful as it continues on in the election season. Dylan, guys, stand by for just a moment. We have some new numbers from Alaska to tell you about. That's right, there is one state we have not yet called, the Alaska caucuses. They are still counting votes there. We'll bring an update right after the break.
You see it right there. Breaking news. CNN is now projecting that Ted Cruz is the winner of the Republican caucuses in Alaska. This is a race that we have been watching. The final race of Super Tuesday has finally projected its winner, Ted Cruz. You see right there, it's been neck and neck all night between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. And as we head into 4 a.m. Eastern, Ted Cruz pulls it out.
the third state, by the way. Third victory for Ted Cruz on this Super Tuesday. Texas, Oklahoma, and now Alaska. CNN's Paul Verkammen live in Anchorage. I have to imagine, Paul, they're excited that we have finally called the race.
They're excited. They're excited that they absolutely shattered the GOP turnout here. We've called the race. There was one precinct left, and that's going to cement the whole deal. And we'll go ahead. Peter Goldberg, you're the chairman here of the Republicans in Alaska. And tell us what the final numbers are in that last of the precincts that just came in. This precinct is in Anchorage.
This is District 25, and our final numbers are Dr. Carson, 33, Senator Cruz, 171, Governor Kasich, 20, Senator Rubio, 87, and Mr. Trump, 161. Cruz is in the lead here, too. It looks like Cruz has the election.
And how do you feel about the record turnout here?
It's just phenomenal. We are roughly 50% higher than our next highest turnout in our history for an election like this.
Well, congratulations, and congratulations to the Ted Cruz supporters. Sterling, come on in here. One of them. Oh, boy. How are you feeling right now that he pulled this out?
I am feeling great for the primary. I just have a message that I would like to give out to everyone who supports Donald Trump right now. He is playing on your fear of change, of immigrants, of Muslims. We cannot be afraid right now. Donald Trump is...
All right. I thank you so much for taking time out. Some might counter that Ted Cruz has said some things that haven't been truthful. Casey Reynolds, you're a blogger here in Alaska. What did it for Cruz? What tilted it? We know that Cruz was here in the Mat-Su Valley helping stump for a Republican senator. Was that a factor?
Absolutely. Alaska is a very retail politics state. Everybody expects to meet their representatives, their U.S. senators, their state representatives. So being up here obviously made a difference. His evangelical street cred obviously made a difference. There are a lot of folks in Alaska that have those values, and I think that's what did it for him.
Great. We thank you so much for taking time out. So finally, after all the counting into midnight here in Alaska, it's over. As you guys pointed out, Ted Cruz has won in Alaska. Back to you now, Kate and John.
All right, Alaska makes it three. 3 states for Ted Cruz: Alaska, Texas, and Oklahoma. Donald Trump with 7. Marco Rubio with 1. The big winner on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely. A big Super Tuesday, and it says a whole lot about where this race goes from here. Much more of our Super Tuesday covers the results of Alaska just in. As you see, we've got much more for you. Stay with us.
All right, the breaking news this morning. The Super Tuesday results are in now, finally, at last. Every single one of them. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, the big winners, but not the only winners. And yes, we do have some breaking news. Just moments ago, we called the state of Alaska. So much to talk about this morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Early Start. I'm John Berman.
And I am Christine Romans. It is Wednesday, March 2nd. It's 4 a.m. in the East. Super Tuesday is over. Now it's Count the Wins Wednesday. And breaking right now, the final race, finally called, Ted Cruz has won Alaska. With 95% of the vote in, CNN is now calling the race for Cruz with 36.4% of the vote, narrowly edging out Donald Trump with 33.6%. Overall, Super Tuesday, a night of big wins for the frontrunners. That is your headline this morning, folks. Trump won 7 states, some narrowly, many by 20 or more points. His rivals picking up 4 states between them. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton also adding 7 states to her win column overnight, while Bernie Sanders picked up 4. Both candidates giving fiery victory speeches last night.
It's clear tonight that the stakes in this election have never been higher. And the rhetoric we're hearing on the other side has never been lower. Trying to divide America between us and them is wrong, and we're not going to let it work.
I'm a unifier. I know people are going to find that a little bit hard to believe, but believe me, I am a unifier. Once we get all of this finished, I'm going to go after one person. That's Hillary Clinton, on the assumption she's allowed to run, which is a big assumption. I don't know that she's going to be allowed to run. And I think that's frankly going to be an easy race.
So you've heard now from the frontrunners, but the nomination contest, folks, is far from over. Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio, all winning states, all collecting delegates, and all vowing to stay in this race. Joining us live from Washington to help break it all down, CNN politics reporter Eric Bradner. Eric, good morning. What a night. The front runners get exactly what they wanted. Maybe they wanted a little bit more, though. I don't know. Everyone this morning says they're going to stay in.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the night of the front runners, no doubt about that. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump each picking up 7 states, but neither landing any knockout blows. Trump proved a lot last night. He demonstrated that he could win with working class white moderates in the North, picking up Massachusetts in a blowout, and he showed he could win among evangelicals in the Bible Belt, winning states like Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. He also picked up Arkansas and Vermont and Virginia. So it was a good night for Donald Trump. He even struck a conciliatory tone, saying that he wants to be a unifier and sort of dialing back the rhetoric a little bit. But Ted Cruz won 3 states. That sort of bolstered his argument that he's the Republican best able to go against Trump. And Marco Rubio finally won his first state in Minnesota, giving him just enough to keep going himself. So neither of those candidates is going to drop out of the race. They're both looking at March 15th, which is another big date, starting the sort of winner-take-all process as opportunities to rack up some more delegates. So on the Democratic side, it went basically as we thought it would. The big toss-up was Massachusetts, and Hillary Clinton won that state. That was important for her. She also won, as you see, Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, a swath of southern states that all have big minority populations, sort of mirroring South Carolina. So we expected that. But Bernie Sanders proved that he could win most of the targets his campaign had been talking about: Colorado, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Vermont, his home state. And so combine that with his big online fundraising machine that brought in $42 million in February alone. And while the path gets narrower for him, there's no reason to expect him to drop out anytime soon.
All right, Eric Bradner for us, thank you so much. As we mentioned before, we have some breaking news in this race. Just moments ago, we called the race in Alaska. The Republican caucus is there. Now, with nearly all the votes counted, CNN has projected that Ted Cruz, he is the winner of the Republican caucuses in Alaska. You can see right there, 97% of the precincts reporting Ted Cruz with a 577 vote lead. A 577 vote lead. But look, there aren't tons of votes in Alaska. You know, fewer than 20,000 there. 577, enough to call the race.
They all matter.
And believe me, at this point, they all matter a lot. CNN's Paul Verkammen, he is live in Anchorage. Paul, you've been counting the votes yourself all night.
I have, John, Kate. It's been quite an odyssey. And if you look behind me, they're still doing the calculating. This is a proportional distribution of delegates. And at last calculation, the winner, Cruz, will get 12, Trump will get 11, and Rubio will get 5. And by the way, 28 delegates, you may say that's not a lot, but actually Alaska gets rewarded for being staunchly red. Don't forget that all 3 members, that's right, 3 members to Congress are Republican. Alaska has 2 senators, of course, and only 1 congressman. Again, 28 delegates in the way they're dividing it up. It looks like Cruz is going to get 12, Trump 11, and Rubio 5. That could change. But it was quite a night here, and it went down to the wire, and they did literally burn the midnight oil in the land of the midnight sun. John, Kate.
Well done with that, Paul Verkammen. Yeah, just called the race a few minutes ago. You had to be up all night to get your final election results here on CNN. Thanks so much, Paul. Joining us now, CNN political analyst, Bloomberg View columnist Josh Rogin, CNN senior reporter for media and politics Dylan Byers, CNN national political reporter Maeve Reston, and CNN political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein. We are lucky to have you all with us at this early hour. Just moments ago, we did call Alaska for Ted Cruz. That makes 3 states for Ted Cruz. Not a bad haul, Ron Brownstein, for Cruz. But on the Republican side, the big winner is Donald Trump.
Yeah, John, your enthusiasm for the Alaska results is truly unparalleled. That is just, it has been a highlight. It has been a highlight of the evening. Look, I think on both sides, what we've seen tonight are the patterns that began to set in South Carolina and Nevada on each side, hardening and raising real challenges for the candidates chasing the frontrunners. On the Republican side, we saw Donald Trump do something that Mitt Romney and John McCain could not do. He won on both sides of that geographic divide. He won, on the one hand, Arkansas and Alabama, and on the other hand, Vermont and Massachusetts. In a normal year, you would be hearing cries for the party to unite behind the frontrunner. This is not a normal year. Donald Trump still scares an enormous amount of Republicans, both in terms of the direction he would steer the party, but also what he might mean for the general election. That CNN national poll out tonight, a reality check, 60% unfavorable, over 70% unfavorable among millennials, over 70% unfavorable among minorities. On the Democratic side, you saw, again, the pattern that we saw in Nevada and South Carolina hardening, where Hillary Clinton has established a commanding and seemingly unbreakable advantage among African-American voters, winning usually 80% or more of them. And Bernie Sanders so far simply has not been able to win white voters consistently or by enough to overcome that. In fact, in the 13 states with exit polls, she has now won white voters in 8 of them. And what that means going forward, virtually every major large state that is coming on the calendar for the Democrats is a heavily diverse state. And unless Sanders can significantly and quickly change those numbers among African Americans, and there's no reason to think he can yet, this is Hillary Clinton's race.
Hillary Clinton needs to do some work with young voters. Bernie Sanders, if he wants to keep going, needs to do some work with minority voters. Hillary Clinton says she wants to bring people together. Let's listen to what she said last night.
Whether we like it or not, we're all in this together, my friends. And we all have to do our part. But unfortunately, too many of those with the most wealth and the most power in this country today seem to have forgotten that basic truth about America.
Sounds, Josh Rogin, like she is looking ahead, really looking ahead to a general election here with a little bit of a leftward tack because of what she's been seeing from the enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail.
Right. We see Hillary Clinton pivoting to the general election. 1, because it projects confidence. She's no longer talking on Bernie Sanders' terms. And 2, because she's actually pivoting. She's getting this thing wrapped up. It seems like a good thing to do. You saw she was in Florida today. That's a general election hotspot. That's exactly where Donald Trump was. But there's another thing going on here. Hillary Clinton needs the Bernie Sanders voters, right? You've got a lot of millions of new Republican voters, and one of the demographics, according to the exit polls, that Hillary Clinton did very poorly with was first-time voters. Another one is young voters. So it's not enough for her to beat Bernie Sanders. She has to bring him into the fold. She has to get him on his side. That's why you see her barely mentioning him, toning down the rhetoric against him, right? She needs him, she needs his voters, she needs his support, especially if there's Donald Trump, who's a completely unpredictable candidate who cuts across moderates and independents, etc. Even Rubio does okay with independents and moderates, according to the exit polls. So Hillary's got to shore up her left flank. That's what you see.
Maeve, on the subject of Marco Rubio, he won 1 state. I suppose in the glass half full category, he won a state finally, which he hadn't done before, and for a while it looked like he might not do tonight. On the bad side,
not a big Republican state.
No, but he's way behind in the delegate race. Ted Cruz won 3 states tonight or overnight. So, what's his path forward? What are you hearing from not just Rubio, but really the establishment? All this anti-Trump vehemence we're hearing right now, it's supposedly not backing one candidate, but it's really behind Marco Rubio.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've heard talking to strategists over the last couple of days and those operatives who are involved in this effort to take down Trump, over the next 2 weeks, is what they're going to try to do to help Marco Rubio is make this sustained attack on Donald Trump's electability, also go over after aspects of his record, failed business ventures, for example, Trump University, a lot of these things that the other candidates have been bringing up this whole time, but they're saying if they can get real resources behind it, they think it can actually make a difference for Marco Rubio. But I think it's a really tough night for him tonight. Ted Cruz obviously was expected to do much better in a lot of these southern states, but at least he pulled off some wins here, even though it was kind of an uneven night for him. For Marco Rubio, who's already sending out emails to his donors saying that he's the underdog and he's way behind in the polls in Florida behind Donald Trump, it's a really tough argument for him him going forward. And he's really got to bring up his numbers in Florida, some of these other states, and really hope that that money finally makes a difference for him in the next couple of weeks.
That anti-Trump coalition want to go over all of the background of the business dealings of Donald Trump to show he's not necessarily just the uber successful billionaire. Trump University has 3 lawsuits against it right now in New York State court. Just yesterday allowed one of those to go forward. There was a Trump airline, a Trump mortgage company, a Trump this, a Trump that, a Trump wine and spirits company, I think. Defunct Trump endeavors that they'll try to go for and show that he's not the big businessman that he has made himself out to be.
All right, guys, stick around. A lot more to talk about. As we just said, the results just in from Alaska. Ted Cruz won there. Despite that, Donald Trump still the front runner on the Republican side. Hillary Clinton, the front runner on the Democratic side. We're going to talk next about what was behind those victories and what opportunities might there be for their competitors. It is the morning after Super Tuesday, which makes it Wicked Wednesday, or Count Your Wins Wednesday.
Count the wins
Wednesday.
Or your win if you're Marco Rubio.
If you're a win for Marco Rubio. There is a new win for Ted Cruz. Just picked up Alaska. We just called the race for Ted Cruz in Alaska. That means 3 states for Cruz last night. Donald Trump picked up 7. Hillary Clinton also won 7 states to Bernie Sanders 4. The question is, who did turn out to vote? What were the keys to these victories? Our exit polls show that among Republicans, it was angry voters dissatisfied with the government. On the Democratic side, voters largely said they would be happy with either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders as their candidate. Let's bring back our experts to talk about this. We always talk about anger, Dylan Byers, but we really see it in these exit polls right now. I think we have some boards from Alabama right now. We asked voters about their feelings about the federal government. 41% said they were angry. 42% say they're dissatisfied. So that's 83% who have a gripe right there in Alabama. And it was largely the same across many of the states we polled last night.
Yeah, and this is a theme that we've seen throughout the Republican primary. We saw it in New Hampshire, we saw it in South Carolina, and we certainly saw it in Nevada, and now we're seeing it in all of these Super Tuesday states. And, we spent a lot of the last 2 hours sort of talking about Alaska, waiting for those results to come in. For me, what's important about Alaska is not so much how they voted, but how many people turned out to vote. You saw the state party chair there referring to a turnout that was 50% higher than any turnout they had in their history. So, the Donald Trump, like it or not, has really galvanized Republican voters. I think Ted Cruz has done the same, and you're seeing these sort of record turnouts for Republican parties, and I think that's something that the Democrats are looking at, and they're certainly getting nervous about. Can Hillary Clinton, a candidate who has struggled to generate as much enthusiasm as, say, Barack Obama did 8 years ago, can she bring out as many people to vote come the general election if she's running against a candidate like Trump? I think her hope would be that she can, maybe not because of her, but because of fears about Donald Trump and what his presidency would mean for Democrats.
Ron Brownstein, it's interesting. You talk about angry Republican voters in these states, and by and large, they chose Donald Trump when they talked about how dissatisfied and angry they are with the federal government, except in Texas, where Ted Cruz did well. But then you talk about top candidate quality for electability, and suddenly the table turns a little bit. When you look at Georgia in particular, it was Marco Rubio who won that category in Georgia. So they're angry at the government. They're angry at their party. They want Donald Trump, except when they talk about who can win, the story changes.
Now, look, we are seeing, Christine, an historic shift of power inside the Republican Party. Donald Trump, the core of Donald Trump's support from the beginning has been the growing number of white working class Republicans. As we've lived through this realignment over the last really 40 years in American politics, more of the white working class that used to be the foundation of the Democratic Party are voting Republicans. And this year, for the first time, I think they are driving the nominee. In the past, you think of John McCain, you think of Mitt Romney. They were primarily candidates of white white-collar, sort of mainstream conservative voters. George Bush, Ronald Reagan, acceptable to both wings. Donald Trump is winning 50% or more in many of these states among non-college Republicans. His numbers among college Republicans almost, in fact, I think in every state has lagged behind his showing among the non-college Republicans, but those voters are fragmented. And the voters driving the train are those blue-collar Republicans who feel both economically marginalized and culturally eclipsed and are the most receptive to the Trump messages that poke at those racial anxieties and anxieties about the changing nature of the country that we saw expressed so, in such a fiery manner earlier tonight by Van Jones and Jeffrey Lord. So this is, make no mistake, if Donald Trump is the nominee, we are seeing a tilt in the balance in the Republican Party that is going to have lasting implications beyond this one election.
And Maeve, when you look at the Democratic side for Hillary Clinton, many of her victories so far in this election have been a story about minority voters. If you look at the state of Texas right now and you break down her vote there, the black vote she won with more than 80% of the vote. The Latino vote she won with more than 70% of the vote. In Texas, at least according to the numbers I have right now, she also did win the white vote, which is interesting as well. But this minority coalition is one that Hillary Clinton has banked on to this date and probably can continue to bank on as she moves forward in this race.
Absolutely. And this really bolsters her argument that she is the candidate who can, bring together the traditional Democratic coalition. We've seen limitations in Sanders' support in a lot of these states around the country. There was kind of a question after the Nevada results there because the exit polls were showing that Bernie Sanders had led among Latino voters. Obviously, the sample size was very small, so Hillary Clinton's people were pushing really hard on that. Tonight, she posted a big win, as you mentioned, among Latinos in Texas. That is a really important part of her electability argument going forward. And I think that that's the biggest gain for her tonight, is that she can really point to these strengths all across the board and say, I am the more electable candidate to go up against Donald Trump or whoever the Republican nominee is.
All right, Maeve, thanks. Everyone stick with us because we're following the breaking news in the race for president all morning long. Yes, night has turned to morning, and we just called Alaska for Ted Cruz. But first, the Supreme Court taking on a high-profile abortion case as President Obama meets with Congress over how to fill the court's vacancy. We've got that next.
The Supreme Court takes on a high-stakes abortion case today. The justices will hear oral arguments about a new Texas law that could shut down 3/4 of the abortion clinics in the state. Opponents claim the measure violates Roe v. Wade. 24 other states with similar laws will be watching the outcome very closely. While that was going on, the White House and top Senate Republicans, they remain in a standoff over filling the vacancy in the nation's highest court. The president met with 4 top senators yesterday. No progress reported.
South Dakota's Republican governor vetoing a bill that would have restricted bathroom access for transgender students. The measure was backed by conservative lawmakers. Governor Dennis Daugaard deciding the law would have invited federal lawsuits if he approved it. He says local schools, they are best equipped to address this issue when it arises.
6 New Jersey newspapers calling on Governor Chris Christie to resign, that in the wake of his endorsement of Donald Trump. Each of the papers published a joint editorial saying they are fed up with what they called Christie's arrogance, opportunism, and hypocrisy. The editorial points out that the governor spent all or part of 261 days out of the state last year and calls for a recall effort if he does not step down.
All right, time for an early start on your money this morning. Wall Street also had a Super Tuesday. Gains for the 3 major averages. The Dow soaring 348 points. That's more than 2%. That's the second best gain of the year. NASDAQ jumping nearly 3%. The S&P 500 also higher. A big jump in oil prices, one reason. But investors were also encouraged by solid auto sales and a positive reading on manufacturing. Dow futures right now point slightly higher. Oil is falling, so we'll see if stocks can open higher with this recent tie to oil prices. Stock markets in Europe are rising, and a big rally in Asian stocks overnight.
Right, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, big wins on Super Tuesday. CNN breaks down what you need to know in the latest news next.
Donald Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton solidifying their lead on Super Tuesday, picking up big states and plenty of delegates, but the race for president, it is far from over. Welcome back to Early Start. I'm Christine Romans.
I'm John Berman. 32 minutes past the hour right now. We do have breaking news this morning. The final race finally called. The winner in Alaska, Ted Cruz. You can see it right there with about 97% of the vote in. Ted Cruz at 36.4%. Donald Trump, 33.5%. They are separated by 627 votes. Record turnout in Alaska. Overall, Super Tuesday, a big night for the frontrunners. Donald Trump, he won 7 states. His rivals picked up 4 states between them. Ted Cruz picked up 3. Marco Rubio 1. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton added 7 states to the win column. Bernie Sanders with a winner in 4. Both candidates, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, they gave fiery victory speeches overnight.
America prospers when we all prosper. America is strong when we're all strong. And we know we've got work to do. But that work is not to make America great again. America never stopped being great. We have to make America whole. We have to fill in what's been hollowed out.
Our country is going to hell, and people don't understand that. And Hillary Clinton doesn't have a clue. She can't do that. She's talking about, one of the things that has really bothered me, I think one of the reasons I have such great support, is that people, you take a look, people in the middle income groups are making less money today, less money than they made 12 years ago. And in her speech, she just said, they're making less money. Well, she's been there with Obama for a long period of time. Why hasn't she done anything about it?
All right, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, as we said, the big winners, but not the only winners. Bernie Sanders won 4 states. Ted Cruz picked up 3. And Marco Rubio with his first state victory of the entire election. And everyone in this campaign on both sides vowing to stay in. Joining us now live from Washington to discuss, CNN politics reporter Eric Bradner. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, John. So it was absolutely a night for the frontrunners. Each, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, both won 7 states. Donald Trump talked about being a unifier, and he began to show what his coalition looks like. He won in the North, winning Massachusetts, a state with working-class Reagan Democrats. He won in the South, the Bible Belt, where social conservatives dominate, picking up Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. He won Arkansas and Vermont, and he shattered turnout records in Virginia. But 2 other Republicans won states, too. Ted Cruz didn't see his Southern strategy go according to plan. He'd been hoping to win a bunch of states, but he did pick up his home state of Texas with a bunch of delegates, plus Oklahoma and, as we've just learned, Alaska. And Marco Rubio, who's still sort of waiting on the cavalry to come, won his first state of the race in Minnesota. So don't expect either of those 2 to drop out anytime soon. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton really dominated the night by winning the 6 states across the South that have big minority populations and sort of continued her firewall of sorts. She picked up, as you see, Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. But the one that really stands out is Massachusetts. That was a battleground state. It was kind of a toss-up. It could have gone either way. The Sanders campaign had targeted it. And by winning there, Clinton shows that she can expand her appeal to a broader chunk of the Democratic electorate. But Bernie Sanders won a few states, too. He picked up Colorado and Minnesota and Oklahoma, 3 states that he had really targeted. And he also won his home state of Vermont, of course, in a blowout. Now, when you combine those wins with the $42 million that Bernie Sanders hauled in February alone, you can see why he's not planning to drop out anytime soon either, especially with more Democratic debates coming up, more opportunities to sort of chip into Hillary Clinton's lead or change the story or pick up momentum nationally, John and Christine.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot ahead here for all of these candidates. Eric Bradner, and you have a fantastic piece on CNN.com this morning, the 6 takeaways from Super Tuesday. Anybody who wants a little more, go for that. Thanks, Eric. Okay, so it was a big night for the front runners. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, not big enough to knock their chief rivals off the board. Here to help us break down all the winners and losers, I want to bring back our panel of political experts. CNN political analyst, Bloomberg View columnist Josh Rogin, CNN senior reporter for media and politics Dylan Byers, CNN national political reporter Maeve Reston, and CNN political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein. Maeve, I want to start with you. It was a good night for Donald Trump. His supporters don't like it when you find the little things around the edges that point to any weakness for Donald Trump. They say, look, this guy has a following and he is going to move forward and get the nomination. But when you talk about electability, first talk to me about how solid his lead was, but then talk to me about the electability issue that we saw in some of these exit polls.
Well, it was really interesting to follow those trends tonight. I mean, this really is a dominant win across the board for Donald Trump. But you did see some of the late deciders in this race going toward Marco Rubio in some states and then going toward Ted Cruz in other states. And that's maybe a sign of weakness for Donald Trump going forward, that perhaps he is not wearing as well on some of these undecided voters over time. We know that the people who have been with him since the beginning are really loyal supporters. One Republican strategist was saying to me yesterday that you can't peel them off with a crowbar. But there are these other Republicans who are not sure about him. And what it showed tonight was that he also has some high unfavorables, even in states that he won, that really point to his ceiling, his ability to grow the party. He got out there tonight at this press conference and talked about being able to unite the Republican Party. There's not a ton of evidence of that yet. Even though he had dominant wins, there are still a lot of people out there who say that they will not support Donald Trump under any circumstances within the Republican Party. So that's his big challenge going forward.
Oh, so the Trump supporters will say, we'll take a plurality of early deciders over a minority of late deciders any day of the week, whatever it gets you over the finish line.
Right.
That's the big thing. Ron Brownstein, speaking of the finish line, Hillary Clinton crossed it 7 times in first tonight. Bernie Sanders did pick up 4 states, but Hillary Clinton, I think the Clinton campaign feels where they won big, in some cases bigger than they expected, and they even won Massachusetts, which in some ways is a little bit of a bellwether.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, in the old days, as we've talked about before, you used to be forced out of the race by a lack of money. Now money is almost infinite with the ability to raise money over the internet and the number of people who will donate. What really, though, the challenge you face is once the mold gets cut, it's hard to break it. And Bernie Sanders is facing a situation where a dynamic has hardened, that Hillary Clinton has established an overwhelming advantage among African-American voters. And what that means is when you get out of places like Minnesota and Vermont and New Hampshire that are essentially all white, it's very hard for him to make the numbers add up. And particularly, as we have said, when you get to the big states, whether it's New York and California or North Carolina and Illinois or Ohio and Michigan that are all coming up, much less Georgia, as we saw tonight, and Florida, you can't make it add up as a Democrat unless you are able to perform reasonably well with the minority voters. Are going to be somewhere between 35 to 45% of the total vote in those states. And right now, we have not seen that from Bernie Sanders. They say African-American voters may be more open to them in the Midwest than they were in the South. We'll know soon enough whether there's anything to that claim.
Josh, speaking about money, there's a lot of money that's going to be, and has been over the past couple of weeks, that's going to be going after this anybody but Trump, this anti-Trump coalition. And it looks like it's going to be solidifying around Marco Rubio. Maybe not by name Marco Rubio, but really attacking Donald Trump. What is that going to look like, and is it going to work?
Right. What you're going to see is a huge campaign, primarily by 2 groups, Our Principles PAC and the American Future Fund, who are going to throw millions of dollars into the anti-Trump effort. They've hired on Jeb Bush's former spokesperson to help with communications. They've got Rubio people backing them, including the Ricketts family. What they promise is an oppo dump like we have never seen on Donald Trump. Imagine all the things you mentioned: Trump University, the illegal immigrants working on Trump Towers, Trump steaks, Trump ties made in China, everything, all states, you name it, the gloves are coming off. Now, the counter that Trump people will make is, oh, that hasn't worked yet, and no, we haven't seen that actually affect Trump's numbers. Well, the Rubio people will tell you, and they're telling everyone who will listen, that they think it has worked. They point to the difference between the poll numbers in Virginia and Oklahoma and Alaska with the results, although that might be upended now due to the momentum that Trump gets from winning states. And also they say that the bottom line is that this is an unknowable election. Trump is so destabilizing, so unnormal, that all of the normal guesses about what money will do and what won't do make no sense. You just have to try it. They've got 2 weeks that's exactly the time frame they're looking
Dylan,
at.
I want your opinion on something. You know, Marco Rubio has been going big and going mean on Donald Trump for several days right now in one state, Minnesota. Ted Cruz won 3. Is there evidence that maybe yes, Marco Rubio was able to bruise Donald Trump, but the beneficiary of it wasn't Marco Rubio, it was Ted Cruz?
Yeah, there's absolutely an argument to be made that that's the case. And if you, just look at the states, look at the delegates, look at the, the amount of support that turned out tonight for Ted Cruz over Marco Rubio. That's certainly the case you can make. But, as Ron Brownstein's been saying throughout our conversation, this isn't a normal election year. Ted Cruz, like Donald Trump, is an anti-establishment candidate. He just happens to be not as good of an anti-establishment candidate as Donald Trump. The establishment is really only left with one candidate, barring some sort of late, surge by John Kasich, which I just don't see happening. And that candidate is Marco Rubio. So they have to throw everything behind him. Now, you talk about this concerted attack on Donald Trump over the next 2 weeks. It's very hard for me to see exactly what those attacks could do that could hurt Trump, because Trump has proven to be invincible for the last 9 months. But the next 2 weeks are key. And I also think more than the ads, what's really key is the fact that we have 2 Republican debates between now and March 15th. Those 2 debates are going to be the chance for Rubio to really shine. And shining means he has to perform very well, because just winning Minnesota isn't enough to cut it if he really wants to win Ohio and Florida.
Maeve, when you look at Cruz, what is the path forward for Ted Cruz? When you look last night at what he won last night, and then you look ahead to March 8th and March 15th, where's the opportunity for him? Is there no opportunity for him?
Well, I think it was a really mixed night for Ted Cruz in the sense that, this was supposed to be his southern firewall. He was supposed to do well in a lot of these states that Donald Trump won outright. So at the same time, he did pull off this win in Alaska, and then in Oklahoma tonight. So you're seeing signs of the sort of spottiness of Ted Cruz's organization. He's very organized in certain states, but he just can't pull it off with the kind of breadth to take on Donald Trump. He's hoping to go into some of these other states. He's headed to Kansas next, and also other states like Mississippi and Louisiana coming up, hoping that conservatives will finally rally around him. That's the argument that we heard him make tonight. But it's really unclear whether that's going to happen. And in some ways, looking ahead at the map for him, it just really looks like a dead end.
Yeah. All right, Maeve, Ron, Dylan, Josh, thanks, everybody. We're going to get back to you in a minute. It was a big night. It's the morning after, actually, a big night for Trump and Clinton this morning. Their competitors are proving, they can be beaten, though. They all see a path forward. We're taking a look at the frontrunners' weaknesses next. It is the morning after Super Tuesday. It's Count Your Wins Wednesday. And even with Alaska now called for Ted Cruz, it's a happy day for Donald Trump, a really happy day. He took 7 of 11 states. A happy day for Hillary Clinton. She won 7 states to Bernie Sanders 4. So who turned out to vote on Super Tuesday? Exit polling says that among Republicans, it was angry voters who are dissatisfied with the government. On the Democratic side, voters largely said they would be happy with either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders as their candidate. I want to bring back our panel of political experts, Josh Rogin, Dylan Byers, Maeve Reston, and Ron Brownstein. And Dylan, those exit polls where we asked people, why did you come today and what were you thinking? Who did you vote for and why? Really telling. These Republican voters are really mad at the Republican establishment and their government.
That's absolutely right. They're mad, they're angry. But, I think more than anything, they're distrustful. They just really fundamentally don't believe that Washington is working, or that Washington is working in their best interests. And, this is sort of a talking point that we've long had, that there's a large swath of the population that doesn't trust the government. We talk about how Congress's approval rating is hitting all-time lows, how the media approval rating is hitting all-time lows. When you go out to some of these rallies, Trump rallies, Cruz rallies, even Rubio rallies, and you look at the voters there in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in Nevada, in some of these Super Tuesday states, there's really a deep-seated anger, and it's not dissimilar from some of the anger that you've seen on the Democratic side in terms of those people who were turning out to support Bernie Sanders. I think when this crazy election process is done, and when we finally get to November and we look back on everything that's transpired, that is going to be the key story of this race, is this broad, deep-seated frustration with Washington, and it extends to all sorts of different groups and demographics in this country.
You know, Ron, I'm just looking at some of the demographics for the Democrats here in Oklahoma when you're dealing with the issue of age. And it's interesting to see because it's just completely inverted when you look at Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and the age of people who voted for them. 18 to 29, you know, Bernie Sanders won 82% of the vote, Hillary Clinton 17%. But as you keep going up, his numbers keep on getting worse and her numbers keep on getting better. It's completely inverted so that Hillary Clinton's best group is 65 and up. You know, is this acceptable for her? Has she just settled into this and this is the way it's going to be for her in the campaign? Or does she try to fight for those younger voters? And likewise, can Bernie Sanders make any inroads with the seniors?
Well, she has tried to fight for it. Look, I think, as I said, I think the mold has been cut on both sides to a large extent. There may be some opportunity to move these patterns around the edges, but we're seeing them pretty consistently. And for Hillary Clinton, it's a trade she can live with in the primary because in 2008, John, 60% of the total Democratic primary vote came from voters older than 45. So if you had to pick one side of that equation to live with, you'd pick the older side. The issue would be more the general election if she gets there. And then, as Maeve said, I think several hours ago, several time zones ago, you know, really the best hope she has is Donald Trump. In the CNN poll out today, his unfavorable among members of the millennial generation is approaching 75%. Wow. It's approaching 75% with minorities. It's 2/3 among women. It's 2/3 among college graduates. There are real issues with Donald Trump's competitiveness in the general election. Yes, he can bring out a lot of working class white voters. He may scramble the map and force Democrats to defend places like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin more than they have in the past. But one of the reasons you're seeing this anxiety among Republicans is that he is most toxic precisely with the groups that are growing the fastest in the electorate and have become the heart of the modern Democratic coalition.
And Maeve, those are minority voters who Hillary Clinton did very, very well with, not just in the South, but across the country. And there's really no surprise there. I mean, the Clinton goodwill, the years of Clinton goodwill to minorities, clearly shining through in these numbers. When you look at the general election, though, for the Republicans, if that nominee is Donald Trump, Republicans got to be worried.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, that's what a lot of these folks who are supporting other candidates like Marco Rubio are saying is look at the demographics of where this race is going. You know, Donald Trump has really high unfavorables among Hispanic voters nationwide, among Latinos. You know, he's got a lot of issues with women voters, not necessarily within the Republican Party, but more broadly. And so I think that he has a lot of work to do in showing that he is the strongest general election nominee here. We've seen some matchups recently where Rubio and Cruz were looking a lot stronger than Donald Trump, and that may give some of these late deciding Republican voters pause as they try to figure out who's the most electable candidate up against Hillary Clinton. That's the best hope that Rubio and Cruz have.
All right, guys, stand by. A lot more to talk about. Chris Christie, you may have seen him last night while Donald Trump was speaking. And right there, he's been by Donald Trump's side for much of the campaign since Friday. A little bit of an uncomfortable situation for him now in New Jersey. A lot of newspapers say he should quit.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court takes on a high-stakes abortion case today. The justices will hear oral arguments about a restrictive new Texas law that could shut down 3/4 of the abortion clinics in the state. Opponents claim the measure violates Roe v. Wade. 24 other states with similar laws will be watching the outcome very closely. Meanwhile, the White House and top Senate Republicans remain in a standoff over filling the vacancy in the nation's highest court. The president met with 4 top senators yesterday. No progress reported.
South Dakota's Republican governor vetoed a bill that would have restricted bathroom access for transgender students. The measure was backed by some conservative lawmakers. Dennis Daugaard decided the law would have invited federal lawsuits if he approved it. He says local schools are best equipped to address the issue when it arises.
6 New Jersey newspapers are calling on Governor Chris Christie to resign in the wake of his endorsement of Donald Trump. Each of the papers published a joint editorial saying they are fed up with what they called Christie's arrogance, opportunism, and hypocrisy. The editorial points out the governor spent all or part of 261 days out of the state last year and calls for a recall effort if he does not step down.
Former cab driver accused of killing 2 Virginia college students is expected to agree to a plea deal in court this afternoon. Jesse Matthew Jr. is charged with the abduction and murder of 18-year-old University of Virginia student Hannah Graham and 20-year-old Virginia Tech student Morgan Harrington. Prosecutors confirm Matthew has taken a plea agreement resolving both cases, but they are not revealing the details. Some new gripping testimony from Fox Sports reporter Erin Andrews in her $75 million stalking case. Andrews detailed how a stalker's peephole video while she was naked in her hotel room caused irreparable damage. But the defense grilled her on Tuesday. They suggested the video has actually helped her career. They will continue presenting their case later this morning.
All right, the presidential candidates poured money into Super Tuesday primary races. More than $27 million was spent on broadcast cable and satellite TV ads in the states that voted yesterday. That's according to the tracking firm Cantor Media. Candidates spent most of the money in Texas, more than $4 million, around $3 million spent in Massachusetts, Colorado, Oklahoma. Bernie Sanders spent the most of any candidate, more than $7 million on ads in Super Tuesday states. Hillary Clinton spent $5.6 million. On the Republican side, Ted Cruz spent $3.4 million. His super PACs dropped another $2.9 million as well. Donald Trump spent $1.6. Marco Rubio bought $439,000 worth of TV spots, but the super PAC aligned with him spent another $4.7 million supporting him.
More than $5 million from Marco Rubio. Those people are going to spend a lot more. It'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump opens up his wallet more than he has. Early Start continues right now. All right, the breaking news this morning. It is the morning after Super Tuesday. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, they won big in the elections yesterday, but the race for president, a long way to go. We're going to break down who won what, where, when, and how, and what it all means going forward. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Early Start. I'm John Berman.
Nice to see you this morning, bright and early. I'm Christine Romans. It is Wednesday, March 2nd. It is 5 a.m. in the East. That's right. And last night is now this morning. And the breaking news this morning, Super Tuesday, a night of big wins for the frontrunners. Trump won 7 states, some narrowly, but some by a pretty wide margin. His rivals picking up 4 states between them. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton, she also added 7 states to her win column overnight, while Bernie Sanders picked up 4. Both candidates giving fiery victory speeches last night.
It's clear tonight that the stakes in this election have never been higher. And the rhetoric we're hearing on the other side has never been lower. Trying to divide America between us and them is wrong, and we're not going to let it work.
I'm a unifier. I know people are going to find that a little bit hard to believe, but believe me, I am a unifier. Once we get all of this finished, I'm going to go after one person. That's Hillary Clinton, on the assumption she's allowed to run, which is a big assumption. I don't know that she's going to be allowed to run. And I think that's frankly going to be an easy race.
The nomination contest is far from over, of course. Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio, they all won states. They all collected delegates. They all vowed to stay in this race. Joining us live from Washington, he'll break it all down. CNN politics reporter Eric Bradner. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Christine. So it was definitely a night for the frontrunners, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton winning 7 of 11 states. But they probably didn't knock out any of their top opponents. So Trump showed that he's starting to put together a coalition. In Massachusetts, he won working class Reagan Democrats. In the Bible Belt, he won social conservatives, picking up states like Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. He won in Arkansas and Vermont. And in Virginia, he shattered turnout records. So it was a big night for Trump, but it was also a decent night for Ted Cruz, who had been sort of losing a little bit of steam, losing a little bit of attention to Marco Rubio as Rubio had attacked Donald Trump. Cruz won 3 states. He won Alaska, which we just found out. He won his home state of Texas, and he won Oklahoma. Rubio, meanwhile, is still waiting for this anti-Trump cavalry to come. He won 1 state, Minnesota, which was important because that's the first state he's won in the contest. So these 3 candidates are going to continue on. None of them is going to drop out, especially before March 15th, when the winner-take-all states start to vote. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton continued to show that she's strong among minority voters. She won a swath of 6 southern states, all with a lot of delegates. We're talking about Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. But perhaps the most important win of the night came in Massachusetts. That was a narrow win, but it's a bit of a bellwether. It's a state that was hotly contested that Bernie Sanders was really targeting, thinking that he could win. By picking up that one, Clinton shows that she can expand her appeal within the Democratic electorate beyond those southern states with heavy minority populations. But Sanders won a few states too. He won Colorado, Minnesota, and Oklahoma, and of course his home state of Vermont. Now, if you combine that with the $42 million that he raised in February alone, and the fact that there are more Democratic debates coming up, including one on Sunday night, there's no reason to expect that Bernie Sanders is going to drop out of the race anytime soon, even as Hillary Clinton starts to dial back her attacks on him and focus instead on the Republicans. John and Christine.
All right, Eric Bradner for us in Washington. Joining us to discuss further, CNN political analyst and Bloomberg View columnist Josh Rogin, CNN senior reporter for media and politics Dylan Byers, CNN national political reporter Maeve Reston, and CNN political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein. Maeve, let's start with you. Donald Trump, a big win, a convincing win, 7 states, some by large margins, some not as much. And you now have the other candidates once again calling on everyone else to drop out of the race so they can take Trump on one-on-one. But that's not going to happen. So Trump not only wins the most states, but he wins by keeping everyone in for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, these 2 weeks are really going to be incredibly important. We talk about make or break moments all the time, but this is the last shot that the cavalry that Eric was just talking about has to come to the rescue of Marco Rubio here. It was, not a good night for Marco Rubio. His donors were hoping that with that debate performance, really going after Trump, that he would put some bigger numbers on the board, but really trailing in the delegate count. Ted Cruz had more wins tonight, but this was supposed to be his southern firewall. This Super Tuesday was supposed to be built for Ted Cruz, and he had picked up wins in some states, but not in the states necessarily that people were expecting. And that gives Donald Trump a strong argument going forward that he is the guy who is bringing the party together, turning out first-time voters. And so it's going to be a really crazy 2 weeks where we basically see all of the Cruz and Rubio allies dumping every piece of oppo that they have on Donald Trump. And in the end, that really just may help Hillary Clinton.
Ted Cruz last night calling on supporters, calling everyone to unite to defeat Donald Trump. Let's listen to that sound.
Together we have a choice. We are blessed with a deep, talented, honorable field. For the candidates who have not yet won a state, who have not racked up significant delegates, I ask you to prayerfully consider our coming together, uniting.
And this is before Marco Rubio won Minnesota. Josh Rogin, so interesting here. The frontrunners, it was the night of the frontrunners, but there was a string for every other candidate to hold on to, whether it's Bernie Sanders, Marco Rubio, or Ted Cruz.
Exactly. Every candidate, well, not every candidate, but Cruz and Rubio at least, still have an argument as to how they can win, a path to victory. It's not a strong argument. The odds aren't in their favor, but here's the argument. 71% of the delegates on the Republican side have yet to be awarded, right? If you look at all the states so far, it's proportional. Trump only gained about 50 delegates tonight over Ted Cruz, maybe 120 or 130 or so on Marco Rubio. So that they can make that back up. There's no argument for them after March 15th. That's when it's the winner-takes-all states. It's the big states of Florida, Illinois, and Ohio. It's the home states for John Kasich and Marco Rubio. If you lose your home state, you're out. If you don't win any state in the March 15 contest, you're out. So for right now, everybody lives to fight another day. In 2 weeks from now, it's a totally different story.
Ron Brownstein lived to fight another day. Bernie Sanders isn't going anywhere, but Hillary Clinton did have a convincing night. She won the southern states she wanted to win by very large margins, and she was able to win in Massachusetts, which was a state where they did go head-to-head.
You know, look, John, what we're seeing on both sides are the patterns that began to come into place in Nevada and South Carolina hardening. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton has established and consolidated an enormous advantage among African-American voters. She's above 71% with them in every state with an exit poll, above 80% in almost every state. And Bernie Sanders simply can't win enough white voters to overcome that in the diverse states, which unfortunately for him happen to be all of the large states. On the Republican side, we're also seeing the patterns confirming. You have Donald Trump did tonight something that Mitt Romney couldn't do, that John McCain couldn't do. He crossed that geographic divide, winning Arkansas and Vermont, Alabama and Massachusetts. On the other hand, there were only 2 states where he got above 40% of the vote, which suggests there is still some resistance to him. The problem for the rest of the candidates is you have Ted Cruz with a coalition that is too narrow, Marco Rubio with a coalition that's too shallow. Ted Cruz has not won non-evangelical voters in any state, including his own of Texas. And Rubio is winning a little bit of everything, but not enough of anything. Only 2 states that he carried college graduates. I don't think he carried non-college graduates in no states. So, you know, at the moment, there is still theoretical vulnerability for Trump. No one in position fully to take advantage of it. And both Trump and Clinton having a clear pathway toward this nomination.
And Maeve, there's going to be an awful lot of money and awful lot of effort from a couple of different PACs now to go after Donald Trump to the benefit of Marco Rubio?
To the benefit of Marco Rubio, potentially, but what we're going to see over the next couple of weeks is a lot of these groups trying out the same attacks that many of these candidates have been using on the campaign trail against Donald Trump for months now. You know, that he has a series of failed business ventures, that he's got problems with things like Trump University, making a sustained argument that he is not the most electable candidate because of this very divisive rhetoric that he's had. The question is there going to be enough money behind these attacks and enough ads to really move the numbers, to make enough Republican voters question their choice, to really turn this into a contest? Because so far, none of these attacks have stuck on Donald Trump, and his supporters who have chosen him have stayed with him, have been incredibly loyal. We're seeing late deciders move over to Marco Rubio and Cruz tonight. Maybe that's a good sign for them, but it's unclear exactly where this big fight is going to go in the next 2 weeks.
And they'll try to really show that it's the everyday guy. It's exactly the kind of person who supports Donald Trump, who has been hurt by Donald Trump's failed business ventures in the past. That's what they'll really, that's what they'll really try to go after.
They got 2 weeks. They've had 8 months to do this, and they're going to try to do it in 2 weeks. Guys, stick around. As we've been saying, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, they won the biggest tonight, but there are some more big contests coming up. We'll break them down next. All right, Super Tuesday is over, but March Madness just beginning. Political March Madness in this case. Joining us now to take a look at what's ahead on the map right now. Our political panel is here to talk to us about this. Let's put up the Republican map if we can right now, with the races that are coming up very shortly. You see it right here. This weekend, it's Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Maine. And after that, you have the winner-take-all states, Florida. Then you have Ohio, Illinois, Ron Brownstein, just big states here. Any sense on who has the edge?
Well, you know, those Midwestern battlegrounds really decided the 2012 race between Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum, and I think they are looming as critical again. And the reason they are is because they kind of balance the different polarities of the party, right? So you have states, Michigan and Illinois, that are closely divided between college and non-college, where evangelicals are about 40%. Ohio and Missouri tilt slightly more blue collar, more evangelical, and these are places where all 3 of the major candidates and plus Kasich can all have a claim. There's all a piece for them. For Ted Cruz, who has been overly dependent on evangelicals, Louisiana and Kansas are probably the best bets. But I think you got to look historically, you know, certainly in the general election, but in primaries as well. Those Midwestern battlegrounds, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri, I think will be the ones to watch. And right now, Donald Trump's dominance among blue collar voters probably gives him the edge in all 4. It will be critical to deny him that. And of course, Marco Rubio has to hold his home state of Florida.
Dylan, let's put up the blue map and take a look at what's in store here for Hillary Clinton and for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Hillary Clinton has wide margins of support in most of those states. Key, of course, in states like Florida and some of those big delegate states. I mean, the issue here for Sanders right now is what it's been all along, is can he expand his base of support beyond white voters? Can he expand it to some of the minority groups like African Americans and Hispanics? There's really been no evidence so far that he can do that, and there certainly wasn't enough evidence of that tonight. And if you just look at the polls and if you look at those demographic groups, it's very hard to see how Sanders continues that. Now, that said, he will stay in the race for a while longer, and he will be able to sort of advance his talking points and his agenda, keep Hillary Clinton tacking more to the left, and maybe he'll consider that a victory. But really, it's hard to see him picking up big wins outside of those states where they're predominantly white voters.
Maeve, we can put the Republicans back up one last time. I want to ask about this wacky weekend we have ahead, because there are some states that we don't normally think about in a primary season: Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Maine, that all vote on Saturday. Any sense on how the candidates are going to approach them the next few days?
Well, we know that Ted Cruz is already headed to Kansas, if not there already. He's going to be trying to keep cobbling together that coalition that he's been trying to put together of conservatives and libertarians. He's did better in some states tonight than expected and worse in others. So he's got an argument that he bested Marco Rubio tonight. But I think that he has a very difficult map ahead of him, where it's difficult to see where he can land some real victories. He's obviously going to hope for some victories in upcoming Mississippi, in Louisiana, and the big test for Marco Rubio obviously is Florida, which is one of the most expensive contests out there. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not Marco Rubio's allies put enough money behind him to really help him do something there.
Or if the money works. All right, guys. Maeve,
Right.
Ron, Josh, Dylan, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
We're following all this breaking news for you in the race for president all morning long. But first, the Supreme Court taking on a high-profile abortion case. We've got that next.
The Supreme Court takes on a high-stakes abortion case today. The justices will hear oral arguments about a new Texas law that could shut down 3/4 of the abortion clinics in the state. Opponents claim the measure violates Roe v. Wade. 24 other states with similar laws will be watching the outcome very closely. While that was going on, the White House and top Senate Republicans, they remain in a standoff over filling the vacancy in the nation's highest court. The president met with 4 top senators yesterday. No progress reported.
South Dakota's Republican governor vetoing a bill that would have restricted bathroom access for transgender students. The measure was backed by conservative lawmakers. Governor Dennis Daugaard deciding the law would have invited federal lawsuits if he approved it. He says local schools, they are best equipped to address this issue when it arises.
6 New Jersey newspapers calling on Governor Chris Christie to resign, that in the wake of his endorsement of Donald Trump. Each of the papers published a joint editorial saying they are fed up with what they called Christie's arrogance, opportunism, and hypocrisy. The editorial points out that the governor spent all or part of 261 days out of the state last year and calls for a recall effort if he does not step down.
All right, time for an early start on your money this morning. Wall Street also had a Super Tuesday. Gains for the 3 major averages. The Dow soaring 348 points. That's more than 2%. That's the second best gain of the year. NASDAQ jumping nearly 3%. The S&P 500 also higher. A big jump in oil prices, one reason. But investors were also encouraged by solid auto sales and a positive reading on manufacturing. Dow futures right now point slightly higher. Oil is falling, so we'll see if stocks can open higher with this recent tie to oil prices. Stock markets in Europe are rising, and a big rally in Asian stocks overnight.
Right, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, big wins on Super Tuesday. CNN breaks down what you need to know in the latest news next.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our special post-Super Tuesday edition of New Day. It is Wednesday, March 2nd, 5:30 in the East, and we do begin with breaking news. A big night for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, both dominating their fields and piling up their wins this morning. On the GOP side, Trump sweeping 7 states. Ted Cruz victorious in 3 states, and Marco Rubio capturing his first win. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton widening her delegate lead with wins in 7 states. Bernie Sanders holding his own with 4 wins. The 2 frontrunners, Trump and Clinton, appear to be accelerating towards their party's nominations. We have this race covered the way only CNN can. So let's begin our coverage with John Berman, who is here to break down who won where and the latest delegate count. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Allison. As you said, it was a big night for Donald Trump. Right now, the clear frontrunner on the Republican side. Look at this. 7 states that Donald Trump won: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Vermont, and Virginia. Ted Cruz, though, did pick up 3 states: his home state of Texas, Oklahoma, and also, while so many of you were sleeping, Alaska. And Florida Senator Marco Rubio did something he has not done yet in this race. He actually won a state. He won the state of Minnesota. The Minnesota caucus is there is for